Jeff Pearlman talked about Chris Johnson, CJ2K, former NFL running back, who has lost all of his motor skills for the most part because he's dealing with Lou Gehrig disease, aka ALS. And he's only 40 years old. He was diagnosed a year ago. And he went on Good Morning America and he was interviewed by a former NFL player, now turned media darling, Michael Strahan. And he did like a whole profile vignette. They had Chris Johnson's family in there, his wife who's been holding him down and helping him out. They did this interview basically that was alerting everyone that, hey, Chris Johnson has this debilitating disease and it's rapidly destroying his body. And so I knew nothing of this. So I was very much intrigued by what Jeff Pearlman had to talk about it. And he kind of aired out Michael Strahan and the whole Good Morning America staff, including the four-letter network, because obviously ABC and the four-letter network are simpatico. Michael Strahan did a horrible job in this interview. Or I could say Michael Strahan was protecting his livelihood and his reputation and his sports reputation in this interview. It can only be one of those two ways. Because at no point during this interview did they make a connection between Chris Johnson playing football and now being diagnosed at 39 years old and now at 40 years old where he cannot speak. He has lost motor skills to the point where he cannot speak. He is wheelchair bound. So the man who could run and outrun entire teams can no longer walk, and he's 40. And there was not one question or not one inclination or not one inference of whether or not football caused this. That is a horrendous job of interviewing by Michael Strahan. And there needs to be an explanation as to why you wouldn't make that obvious statement or obvious question. How can you have a person who was as athletic as they come, like Chris Johnson, sitting before you, knowing that he cannot speak, he cannot move his mouth enough to speak, he cannot stand up and greet you, he is wheelchair bound, and he is younger than you, and he played the same sport as you for a shorter time than you, and you don't even just ask, even if Chris Johnson denies it, even if his family poo-poos it, even if the doctors try not to make an inference, even though that's not true, there's been studies that have been done that Lou Gehrig disease, ALS, does have an impact on football players. Playing football does have a strong penchant for ALS disease developing. Studies have been done. Now, whether the Good Morning America people, the ABC people, the Full Network people knew this ahead of time, I do not know. But Google is your friend. DuckDuckGo, more specifically, is your friend. It's just a search away. We search everything else. You couldn't search connection point ALS to NFL players. Here you have a 40-year-old, recently turned 40-year-old running back with the most dynamic, one of the fastest players ever, who now can't walk. And you don't come to think, well, maybe did football do this? How did we get here? When you have a debilitating disease, one of the first questions is why? How? How did this happen? Why me? Michael Strahan has a man that clearly has been impacted physically, mentally, spiritually, by a disease that is ravaging his body and his motor skills to the point that he can't speak and he can't walk. And you don't ask him, how did this happen? Or what have the doctors told you how this could have happened to someone so young? Someone who we knew at one point in time at the peak of all athleticism. And now you've lost all your motor skills in just a short amount of time? How did this happen? So not only did Strahan not ask Chris Johnson about it, hey, did football do this to you? At no point in the entire discussion afterward was there any mention, like the Four Letter Network did a whole article about the Chris Johnson appearance. And they, in that article, did not mention anything about NFL players and ALS diagnoses. Now, I get it. The Four Letter Network and The Shield are in bed together. Like literally on paper, they're in bed together. So I'm not necessarily expecting ESPN to go hard on The Shield now. They weren't going hard before. They damn sure not going to go hard on them now. But just a basic standpoint, it's not even a journalistic question. It's a human angle. Like Strahan is in the journalism space now, whether he wants to admit it or not. And that's why people that are legitimate journalists like Jeff Pearlman are like, yo, dog, you dropped the ball there. Just like when Shannon Sharp, when he was first jumping into his space with Club Shay Shay, people were getting at him because of his lack of interviewing skills. Same thing here. Interviews are at their best when they're conversations, not just Q&As. There's a difference between holding a Q&A and having an interview that feels more like a conversation between some folks. And what Michael Strahan didn't do in asking the human question of, yo, man, you just turned 40. You can no longer speak. You are wheelchair bound. You were one of the fastest players in the league, if not the fastest. How the hell did we get here? If it was a car accident that paralyzed him, he would have asked that question. If Chris Johnson had suffered from any kind of substance abuse and was now rehabbing and had come through on the other side, Strahan would have asked him about it. If Chris Johnson had went to jail and was being released and was rehabbing his image, he would have asked him about it. But how come an NFL player contracting ALS disease at the age of 39 and the disease accelerates to the point that by the age of 40, he can no longer speak or walk, you don't ask him, how the hell did this happen? That's not some journalism shit. That's just some human shit. Horrible job. Absolutely horrible job by Michael Strahan. I feel bad for Chris Johnson and the fact that the Shield is going to be protected yet again. This sport is tearing down the bodies of the players who play it. I have never seen so many players that are getting out and retiring before the age of 30, before the age of 27 even. They're retiring because they know what the impact of staying too long can do to not just your brains. We know what the CTE is. We know what that is. We have come to the grips of what CTE can do to the human brain. But now we're getting things like this. Back in the days, it was, all right, you might have to get a hip replaced, a knee replaced, something to that effect, right? Now we're talking ALS. That's getting you out of here in a year. Hopefully Chris Johnson can fight this thing for as long as he can, and he seems to be down to put up the good fight. He's got young children. He's 40 years old. He's got a young wife. He's 40 years old. Like, he has a lot of life left ahead of him in theory. But because he played that sport the way that he did in the era that he did, with the lack of awareness at the top, He is now being subjected to a debilitating disease that is going to get him out of here. And there will be people that are going to say, well, you knew he should know what he was signing up for. We don't do that when it's our family members. When your family member goes out of here with lung cancer and you watch that relative smoke a pack a day, you don't tell that relative they got what they asked for. They knew what they were doing. When your relative goes out of here and they're pill popping and they OD, you don't talk of them and say, well, they got what they were asking for. They knew what they were doing. But somehow when it comes to athletes, specifically football players, who don't know what the effects are. When Chris Johnson first played football, he had no idea that the sport he was playing, that I'm assuming he either loved or grew to love at one point, would make it so that he would be wheelchair bound and would not be able to speak before the age of 50. An age that he legitimately might not live to see. It's extremely problematic that this story is just going to be poo-pooed and pushed to the side as just another athlete, another millionaire athlete. They'll do the GoFundMe thing and all that stuff. But the problem is deeper than that. This sport, as much as it's the most popular sport here and it makes people a lot of money in all different aspects, right? From the owners to the players to the staff to the media to the people who work at the stadiums, the trickle-down effect is there. However, there is a undercurrent, and it's not even that under anymore, but I'll still call it an undercurrent because the media doesn't want to prop it up to where it should be because they're all in bed with the league. There is an undercurrent in the underbelly of what this sport is doing to the people that play it. And partially because the people that are playing this sport predominantly look like Chris Johnson looks, a certain aspect of the fan base will not care. And there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing Chris Johnson can do about that. That's just the way this country is, unfortunately.